Bonjour et re-bienvenue sur le podcast de Sur deux roues. Cette semaine, un épisode un peu spécial en anglais alors qu'on reçoit Anthony de Rasputitsa. Cette année, c'est le 10e anniversaire de la célèbre course de gavel au Vermont et ils font les choses un peu différemment. Ils retournent aux sources. Le trajet va être un des trajets originaux de la course. Donc, on parle de tous les changements qui vont être apportés cette année afin d'éclairer les participants sur ce qui les attend. Avant d'aller plus loin, j'aimerais simplement rappeler que nous sommes disponibles sur Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts et à peu près toutes les autres plateformes imaginables de podcasts. Je vous invite à nous suivre sur votre plateforme préférée afin que l'on puisse être découvert. Récemment, j'ai eu une belle petite victoire alors que j'ai reçu un courriel me disant que j'étais dans le top 10 de la catégorie podcast cyclisme dans la francophonie. Alors, ça fait chaud au cœur. On continue dans la bonne direction. Merci beaucoup de nous écouter. C'est toujours un plaisir de voir les chiffres monter de mois en mois. Sur ce, sans plus tarder, on va aller avec notre invité.
It's always good to start earlier because once I think I was halfway through the podcast when I realized that I didn't start the recording.
Oh, yeah,
So,
that's trouble.
Yeah, better start it earlier than later.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, you just said you went for a run?
Yeah, it was too nice. It's too nice not to go for a run today.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect weather, right?
Yeah, today it is. Where it's 67. I don't know what that is in Celsius, but it is
Yeah, it's not too hot.
not too hot. I actually wore a long sleeve.
That's
But
amazing.
I've been coaching for the past couple of months, so my fitness is terrible. So I'm taking advantage of nice weather before the snow comes next week.
Yeah, that's always the balance between like being off bike or off training versus like being on a training schedule. It's always hard. Like I have the same struggle with the blog where I either blog a lot and don't ride my bike as much as I would like to, or I have the opportunity to ride a lot but not blog a lot about it. So yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah, I'm an office guy, so it's like if I get that opportunity, and usually I'm out every day, but I've been coaching high school soccer. So this time of year, I work and then I go to practice, and you're not running, you're standing. That's how it is.
Totally get it. Yeah, I'm super happy to talk about and it's always hard for me to pronounce it, Rasputitsa.
I think you're saying it just as well as we're gonna say it. So
that's amazing. Yeah, my Ukrainian is a little rusty. Yeah,
we got a message the other day, and it's nothing that we hadn't thought of. Like, so since you're recording, and I'll give you a little, the history of the Rasputitsa was when we first started this 10 years ago. There's a lot of like Cold War history in the area between like Burke and even across the border, like near North Troy. And, there was a lot. So like Rasputitsa as a Russian word and being that Cold War history, it just kind of made sense. And that's what we went with, being the time of year and everything. It was perfect. So obviously when the Russians invaded Ukraine, and we immediately thought, all right, we got to change some of the verbiage, but we're not going to change the word because in a way it's still Ukrainian. Yeah. And we'll say it is because it was part of Russia at one point. So, but then we got a message this week, which is kind of a couple years too late at this point, about telling us we should consider changing the name. I'm like, I think you're just a little behind the eight ball.
Yeah.
We just don't say, we try not to advertise about that Russian, but it's history, right? And so when we're talking about history, we don't ignore it. We learn from it, and it's still part of this community that happened. So that doesn't change anything.
Yeah, yeah. In French, we say, if I translate it, it's like a hot potato where you kind of,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm following.
it like it's you just sit between two chairs. You know what I mean? It's hard
Yep.
to please everyone and respect history and all verbiage. So yeah, I understand the struggle.
Yeah. We're not changing it, by the way. We're
Oh,
sticking with our
cool.
name.
Yeah, cool. Because it's always hard to change the name and rebrand, especially when you have a brand as strong as yours. I just truly believe that, and this is why I really wanted to talk to you today, because I think it's like it's big in the community. It's on the bucket list of so many cyclists, and it's legendary.
Thank you. I mean, it's when we started it, when Heidi and I kind of got into this, it wasn't to be something that was going to be part of someone's bucket list. It was because at the time we were both working in the cycling industry. We loved it and just wanted to just continue that in outside of a official work setting, and something that was racing, that was just fun. um Alamanza was kind of going strong, and we loved that idea of bringing people together, mass start, no real rules, quote unquote rules, but we all have, like, there has to be, um and trying to bring just people together, mass start, everyone racing or riding and doing that. And that's kind of what we aimed for. And after we started with actually a race called the Dirty 40, which we hosted that for 3 years, and it was Labor Day weekend. And as you're fully aware, that end of summer schedule just becomes tough. It became really hard for us to continue that. We didn't really see anything picking up, but within the 2 years of hosting Rasputitsa at the same time, that that ride just like exploded for us. So we said, okay, we have a choice. We can have these two kind of like moderate races that are something that people will enjoy, but they're never going to be huge. They won't be something that people kind of skip over year after year. Or we put all our energy and all our effort into one, and that's what we did. That's what we did with Rasputitsa, and we put all our energy there, and um, the rest is kind of like spoken for itself as far as how big the events become.
Yeah, and I think the fact that you chose you know early in the year, and especially in Vermont and in the middle of the thaw, I think it makes it legendary,
Yeah,
because like Labor Day weekend is just another ride during the year. Like, I mean, it's summer at that point. It's still summer at that point, so there's no
exactly.
big challenge. But I'm just thinking, and I think what made it was already legendary because of the mud and the condition and the cold. But when we saw all the influencers, and I don't know if it was like intended to be a big year for you from an influence perspective, but 2019,
2019.
it
No,
was,
no one will ever forget that year.
yeah. That was a legendary one, and I think this is when people started to get a little scared of it, because of the snow, and it was extremely cold that year. I don't know if you want to talk about that edition a little bit.
So yeah, I mean, that obviously you pick a date. We pick a date a year ahead of time, and
Mhm.
so you don't know. You look back at just this past year, 2023. It was our our partner that we brought in, Jeff Price. him and his wife went and rode the course. Oh, it was like 2 weeks before or 3 weeks before Rasputitsa, and it was 85 degrees. And this is beginning of April.
Yeah.
So you can't pick the weather, and we have no idea. But we obviously aren't trying to get 85-degree hot weather for this race. It started the first year we did it in Newport. It was perfect. It was that high 40s. Snow was just starting to melt. The roads were saturated, so they were slow. They were, boggy. The back roads were even worse. And every piece of pavement was the best thing in the world, because it's like you finally got a break and could roll on your bike. And those to us, that was like the best conditions that we could possibly ask for. So one of the big things that we always had to keep in mind because of the area is snowmobile dates, which end riders on snowmobiles can go up until and through April 15th. So that's always been like a date for us, and we learned this the hard way. That's the date that we have to like kind of keep in mind of. We got to be on the other side of that, because if it's a great snow year, those trails could be open and they're going to ride April 15th, period. And that the first year we went to Burke, we had that. It was April 15th or something, and there was tons of snow. So we did this class 4 section, and wouldn't you know it, like snowmobiles are out. And we had contacted the local snowmobile clubs, and we talked to them about, hey, we're going to use this. Is this okay? And of course, they look at the date and they're like, yeah, no problem. There's no snow. Yeah, well, that pretty much sealed our fate that it was going to be snowy. But that kind of, that gave us a chance to learn from that and say, all right, we have to be on the other side. 2019 came around. We're like, all right, this is a good date. We can pick this. And it just became everything that you wanted it to be. It was pouring rain, but hanging around that freezing point at the start. And again, you can't do anything. People are lined up, and they're like, you want to get them on the road, but at the same time, you got to be safe. And we got to spread people out because we have a couple of waves. But because of the elevations, it was probably maybe halfway through the race, it turned to snow. So everybody's bikes were just seizing, and the roads were wet. And so the mud and the ice would build up on the cogs and in the discs, and it's like nothing was going to work. I remember seeing people with both feet on the ground going down hills because the brakes were gone. Like it was one of those. And we had a rest area that was at the furthest point in the ride, and there was nothing around. And if you were there, you probably remember it. That's when we had the bus. We brought the bus out. We loaded the people on the bus, and just to keep them warm. People were doing whatever they could just to get warm, and they were shivering. And it's one of those that you couldn't prepare for if you wanted to, unless you had extra 3 pairs of socks and gloves and a jacket that was absolutely 100% waterproof. You weren't going to be ready for it. There's no way you could do it. I remember, I think it was Lynn Bissett had like grocery bags, like the plastic grocery bags on her feet, and then had socks just to keep her feet dry. But everyone kind of did what they had to do just to kind of survive that. So it was an epic year. And Heidi and I thought, again, that was one of those years that we're like, this is it. That's it. It's over. No one's going to want to come back after that. And people could not wait to try again.
Yeah, that's the crazy part because, like I said, I really wanted to register for 2019, but I don't know what I had that year, but I couldn't go, and there were a few influencers. So I think Jeremiah Bishop was there.
Hmm.
The vegan cyclist was there. There were a few people, and they all posted on social and made videos and stuff like that. And I think it just like, it went like people thought it was always like that,
Yeah.
which is not the case. But for most people, because it was like the one with probably the most PR around it,
Yep.
people thought it was like that. So every time I talk about Rasputitsa to friends and I post online about it, people are like, "Oh, this is um the crazy race," and I'm like, well, I was there last year, and there was, I think, half a mile of mud, but otherwise it was not too bad. I mean, it was a little wet some places. There was, like I said, a little segment of mud, but otherwise it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of elevation. I mean, it's what, 60 miles? Is it 60 miles?
Yeah, that was we had the last year we had 100K, we had a 70K, and then we had the 40K. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean you can't be in Vermont and not have 1,000 feet of elevation gain in 10 miles. Like it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That's the reality. But the downside is you can't control what the weather is going to be like.
Yeah.
Um, we hope for mud, we hope for wet, because the challenge is the road conditions, and if they're dry and they're hard, then it becomes just another ride.
Yeah.
And uh, the Heidi and I started the conversation even before last year started of how do we keep, not to call the riders that participate customers, but they are, in a way they're a customer, right? And so you're trying to keep a
Mhm.
customer happy. How do you keep that same person wanting to come back and finding new ways? Because if we're just another spring gravel ride, and there's dry roads and it's just dusty, then there's nothing really captivating about
Yeah.
that, right? And so that's what we really thought of. And having a couple distances that made a difference. um we I think it gave people a chance to say, all right, well, I'm not going to be that fit, but I can I can still ride, like I can ride 60K or
Yeah.
70K. Might not be able to do 100, but I can do sit. Or you know what, I'm going to do 40 and ride with somebody who's never done anything like this before. And um, it became logistically challenging for me, but I think the courses were beautiful. I really loved them, loved doing those. Um, but again, when we talked about what do we do for our 10-year anniversary, how do we make that? How do we bring people back? J Peak was just something that we had conversations a few years ago before COVID about trying to get there, and maybe it was just like we couldn't see it. We couldn't see how it would work. They've changed. The mountain has changed up there quite a bit, and the facilities have changed, and the accesses to through the resort have changed since that conversation took place. And I think when we really started to look at it this year, we said, I think we can make this work. The beauty of J Peak is it becomes more of a um, family friendly environment. Like,
Mhm.
you know, if mom wants to ride and has the kids, and dad's staying back with the kids, well, there's tons to do up there.
Yeah.
The beauty of it too is that there's no shortage of dirt roads. But we're going to scale back and just have that one course, because it is a little bit different as far as, like, you don't have these winding dirt roads that can keep you in a small town for hours. We end up traveling through like 5 different towns in this proposed course for next year. But there's some, to your point, there's some really nice class 4 trails on the resort up near the mountain that will, I think, really bring it back, that feel of, oh, we're going for a hike and bike, or we got to get off, and this is going to be muddy, and this is going to be challenging, and this is what we remember.
Yeah.
Regardless of if it's warm, it's still J-Peak, and usually there's people still skiing, and the chairs and tram is still open, so they're a little bit higher elevation that they have snow up that high, which works in our favor.
So we can expect mud next year.
You should be able to expect mud and snow for sure. Yeah.
Cool. And what else can we expect? So you said there will be one distance?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. By doing one distance, we've talked about this, and we're gonna have a wave start. So as people register, we're gonna dump them into different waves based off of we have a couple of questions that we're asking through registration. Is, how fast do you see yourself going? And based off of that, we're going to seed people into 5 different waves so that they can descend the mountain in safe groups, because we're going to start at the resort, and we're going to come through and get down off the mountain, and to have, a lot of people do that at one time can be really tough. So we're going to do waves, but it also spreads people out a little bit and makes the front pack, the people who really, really want to race, get them out in front so they're not trying to weave through a bunch of people. People who, we can classify people who are going to ride a fat bike with them and let them all race together if they wanted to. It gives us a better balance of how to expect riders to come in and when they're going to finish. So logistically, it becomes a little bit easier. So you're going to see a little bit more of a breakdown with waves, and you're going to be racing the clock, not racing the people as much. It's going to be a 50-50. So you don't know. There could be a sandbagger in the 3rd wave, and you just don't know how fast they're going to go.
That's cool. And one question I had, and it may be a little dumb because this podcast will be live the day the registration opens, but
okay,
what will be the distance this year?
The exact distance will be determined the week of, but approximately somewhere around 55 miles.
55. Okay. And in terms of elevation, do we know approximately how much elevation will?
I think you're looking around the same. Like I said before, you can't ride in Vermont, at least northern Vermont, without doing 1,000 feet of elevation gain every 10 miles. So it's really like, and that's just the reality of it. I'm not trying to make it tough. We're just on the roads. Like these are the roads. This is how it works. So
what else can we expect from the Green Mountain State?
Like I said, you can expect some more class 4. We're going to have 2 aid stations, so we're not going to load up on aid stations. There'll be 2 aid stations. There's a little bit more pavement, but the segments of pavement, I think, really break up the amount of dirt roads that you have, and you'll find that those, however long they are, whether they're 2-mile stretches, 3-mile stretches of some pavement, there's, in the beginning you're on pavement. There's a stretch of, a half a mile. There's a stretch of, what is that? That's like 3 miles. There's another stretch that's 2 miles. So you have a couple of places of pavement, but breaking up so much gravel will feel like the best thing in the world. It's just that, oh my God, I can pedal. I can just coast. I can take a break. So I think that's what you're going to see. There's going to be a lot more. We're really putting a lot of emphasis on having road marshals and safety on the course. You know, that's one of those things that it doesn't change. The amount of safety that we want is always, you know, we hold ourselves to the highest standards with safety. But what you can't change is how somebody rides a bike.
Yeah.
So, you know, we'll definitely emphasize in communications, roads are open. We don't close the roads. There's too much. It's too much distance, too many different towns. We're not closing a road. Towns aren't going to allow for it because you have people who are relying on that. So you have to obey the rules of the road. And people have to respect, the riders have to respect the roads that are on, the towns, the communities. That's a big piece of this. You know, we saw frustration in Burke because some riders would come in and you know, it's easy to pick out people who are not nice when you have such a big group of nice people, right? You know, it takes one or two to sour it, and it's what happens. You always have one or two that put a bad taste in the mouth.
Yeah.
So Burke itself is a wonderful community, and people should continue to go there and ride their bikes on the Kingdom trails and the dirt roads. But like I think when it comes to our ride in 2024, you'll find that we're definitely looking at this as an event. Like Friday through Saturday night is an event.
Cool.
And that's what we want to have. And so there's things going on at the mountain, family oriented. Go skiing if the kids are there, or if your wife and friends aren't going to ride, but you're going to ride, and you bring a bunch of people. Well, there's skiing, there's the water park, there's clips and reels. So there's the ropes course and climbing walls and stuff like that. So there's plenty to do. There's the pools, there's the hot, like, have at it, right? You can kill a day pretty easy at J Peak. I think that's one of the big benefits, and more lodging within the resort helps as well. So people won't have to be really shopping for where do I stay? Well, there's a lot of places. I think they have more beds than all of Burke.
Yeah.
So we're good in that aspect. But I don't think that there's anything you shouldn't be unexpected in the amount of forethought that we put into this weekend, because we're still every single day, you know, our chat's going, and what do we do? Let's do this. Let's try this. And, you know, there's always creative ideas flowing and seeing logistically if we can do it. But again, it's an event, right? It starts Friday and we carry it right through Saturday night.
Yeah. That's one thing. Like, I think that was my only comment last year, and that was not anyone's fault. I just think that, you know, in Burke, like you said, we're all spread around, and people are in cottages or at the hotel, or even, like, I've heard some people like were 25 kilometers away. So so it's hard to have this sense of community that we see at Big Red Gravel Run, for instance, where we are all camping at the same place for 3 days, you know. And also the weather, like, we cannot just go outside because at some point it's just so cold. So I really enjoyed, like, the expo last year. I had the opportunity to meet some amazing people, but also, like, find new products that I was looking for, to be honest. Like, I'm thinking Bevo, and I forgot the name of the electrolytes.
Plank.
Yeah. So that was great discovery, and I really enjoyed it. And the party at the end, that was also super nice. But I just feel like people were leaving earlier. But I think that, just like you said, at JP, because we will be able to, and the riders will be able to be at one site and enjoy the facility instead of being spread around. It will be easier for people to party a little more and just be all together as a community, right?
Yeah, totally. I think that's what we want to really make sure
Cool.
people are, you can pretty much walk anywhere on that resort. Yeah, it might be a little bit longer of a walk from one side to the other, but there's shuttles, and so it's so easy to have everybody right there. And I think getting more people together and just the atmosphere will be much different. And that's what we look for. Burke, yeah, it's very limited on the space. It's a beautiful resort, and we did everything that we could to keep people engaged and keep people there. And we understand Saturday is always tough because people are tired, right? It's
Yeah.
exhausting. It's a long day on a bike, but we still want to make sure that it's people get the experience. So
Cool.
I hope that we're able to continually replicate year after year, but bring something new and exciting to all those first time people.
Yeah. And I think that's the idea why I really wanted to invite you on the podcast, because last year I had the chance to be invited and have an extra pass for a buddy, and it was hard for me to find someone who really wanted to go because they thought it was too hard. They thought it was too cold, too early in the year, all excuses. And in the
Mm-hmm.
end, like, my experience was, it was great. Like, yes, it's a long course. Yes, it's a lot of elevation when you were only on Zwift for a little while. Yes, it's colder than summer rides, but I mean, the overall difficulty, it's hard. There's a little bit of mud, but it's so fun. I mean, the community, then there are the feed stations. I've never seen feed station like this. I
Yeah.
mean, there are shots, there were beers, there was so much. It was fun. It was more of a party, and yeah, so it was a lot of fun.
And that's why we don't want to get away from the race aspect, of that. It's a race. Let's, whether you're racing against the clock, whether you're racing against yourself or your friends, we want to call it a race. We don't want to get away from that. But if you're still that person that's like, let's just go ride, let's have fun, we're gonna finish, we're here for the entire weekend, that's the point. Like, I think it checks a lot of boxes, and that's the point. We didn't want to be just another race on the calendar that is show up at 6 a.m., get your bib, line up at 8, and then you're done and you're gone. That's not what we wanted to do. So it's Rasputitsa is an event, and it's I hope that people start to see that, and that, it, especially when we start talking. I know there's a lot of talk too about, I'm not on social media, but I listen to like Jeff and Heidi, and they talk about like, hey, we see these comments. There's a lot of talk about value. We're trying to add value into what you get when you register for Rasputitsa. You show up Friday night. We want you there from Friday afternoon until Sunday morning, having breakfast and still shaking hands and seeing people, and then maybe going out for a shakeout ride. That, to me, that's an event. That's a weekend. That's not just show up for this ride and be done. And there's only the expo while the race is going on. It is 3 days, or it's 48 hours of fun. That's an event. So that has a value to us, and that's what we're trying to bring, is that people understand that don't sign up for just the ride piece, because you're missing out a lot of other things. You're missing out on some really good people, some really great vendors, and we have that farmers market and people who are going to come and set up and show off stuff. The great bands that just come and listen, chit chat with people, and just be part of it. That's what we're trying to differentiate between us and the other rides, especially in New England.
Amazing. I think I hope listeners of this podcast hear you loud and clear on this one, because I totally agree with you. It's a fun event. It's unique, and hopefully listeners will be there this year.
Yes, let's hope so.
Cool. Well, I think that summarizes everything I wanted to talk about today. I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add before we call an end.
I mean, you said this isn't going to air till after a registration opens, so it's no point in pitching the registration time and day at that point. So,
yeah, exactly. My goal is to post on November 1st this podcast.
Okay.
So registration opens today, and if you're listening later than November 1st, you can still go on the website and register for this amazing event.
I think that, this, like I said, if you're kind of on the fence about coming for the weekend, making it to Rasputitsa, call up some buddies. This is the beauty of J Peak, is they have condos all through that resort that can host, 3 people in a room, 1 person in a room, 10 people in a condo. Like, call your buddies, get a condo, make it a weekend, go for a bike ride. Don't race. Either way, you're going to get timed. It's going to be fun. And if it ends up being pouring rain or snow and you say, you know what, screw this, go to the water park, go to the climbing wall, go to the hot tub. I don't know, just come out and be part of the event. I think that's what I want people to see, is be part of it.
Yeah.
You'll enjoy it.
Yeah, that's fun. You mentioned this because last year I think we were 5 people in one tiny cottage. There were people sleeping everywhere, like bikes and people sleeping, and you couldn't wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom because there were people everywhere sleeping. So that's part of like my best memory of the weekend, is being like all community in a tiny cottage. So so renting a room, that will probably be the plan this year, to rent a 2 people room and end up being 6 in the room.
Perfect. That's what it needs to be.
Cool.
Just let me know what condo, so I'm coming over, okay?
Yeah, sure. There will be a lot of Eddie Topper cans everywhere.
All right. I'll take the root beers, but I'll be there.
Cool. Well, thanks for your time, and good luck with everything, and hopefully we'll see each other's at the next edition of Rasputitsa.
Oh, you bet. Thank you, Jean-Philippe.
Cool. Thanks.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Merci beaucoup de nous avoir écoutés encore une fois cette semaine. Ça fait un plaisir de parler avec des acteurs du milieu du cyclisme. N'hésitez surtout pas à liker et partager le podcast afin que de plus en plus de gens nous écoutent. C'est un plaisir d'avoir la chance de recevoir des acteurs du cyclisme chaque 2 semaines sur le podcast. C'est encore plus un plaisir de voir que les gens aiment ce que l'on fait. Merci beaucoup.